All right, welcome to the select board meeting for the town of Georgetown for Tuesday, May 27th. This is being recorded for our YouTube channel and, call to order at 6:03. Is there any public comment? I do not.
Lisa Sabatine has a public
Whoop.
comment, and I think Representative Hamilton just got here. Still ahead of schedule.
What, does nobody come in person anymore?
Hardly. Sorry, Lisa, somebody just
That's
came
okay.
in, so,
Yeah,
Yeah.
no, that's okay. All right to go ahead?
yes.
Yeah, okay, thanks. I listened to your last select board meeting and I know there was some discussion about the boat in Rousick. And I just wanted to make my comment after thinking about it. I mean, I'm sympathetic to what they are dealing with. We've had to deal with the same issue, and I think that I just would like to express my uh suggesting that we do not fund the removal in Arousik at this point. I mean, I think going forward, we may want to consider as three towns that are all waterfront towns, how to best handle this in the future. But I think our harbor master has certainly done his due diligence and that we should not take on that financial responsibility. So thank you.
All right, thank you. Is there any other public comment? I do not see any, so I will turn it over to you, Tyler.
All right, and I would just
You're
note
unmuted.
that I let the board know today that the only item to be added to the agenda was an item under old business for a final determination on that Arousick funding request regarding the hook, line, and sinker. So you were very apt, Lisa, in those comments. And we have a 6:05 scheduled appointment, and I'm gonna, at 6:04, turn this over to Representative Hepler to show her that we do not operate on legislative time. And you get that joke.
Yes, I do. We just got out at 5 o'clock. So thanks for inviting me. I usually try to get here a little earlier in your session. I wrote down, after I talked with Tyler, I wrote down just a bunch of things, and then, we, obviously ready to take up any questions. I'm always interested in what towns are interested in. The first thing, so is that a good way to,
Yeah.
okay. So, maybe I'll hold off on the county commissioner thing, cause you wanted to
Yeah.
also talk about that, okay. A little update on LD1, it currently is still dead, but there was an effort to bring it forward again. So I think it's been tabled in the Senate and I haven't heard anything else. I don't.
Allison, what is LD1?
LD1 is the property tax levy limit that towns had to vote on to exceed. I don't know whether you guys have ever exceeded it. Have
Yeah,
you?
we have, we
Okay.
used to vote on, it's been
Yeah.
on every warrant ever
Right.
since it went into
Right,
play back in the early
Yeah.
2000s.
right.
We took
Yeah.
it off this year.
Yes, and I'm
Yes.
hoping it
So,
stays off. I
you know.
pulled my floor speech out this year, the same one that I did
Yeah.
last year, to sort of say, no, there are other mechanisms that are better.
Yeah.
That control overspending. So that's what that is. Does that help, Ron?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, there's a whole bunch of things that came forward in the taxation committee. This session to sort of deal with property tax with, seniors and all kinds of extra exemptions. I think the last thing I heard was, and I actually got this from the MMA bulletin, was that they're setting up a task force on property taxes. And I was gonna sort of offer myself if they want a legislative person on there, but I don't know anything else other than that. So I don't know what kinds of things they passed so far. I actually have a bill that I'll be, whenever it comes to the floor, we'll be dealing with to get rid of the time limit on the homestead exemption, where there's a 12-month, you have to wait, it's a waiting period for the homestead exemption. I, with the help of Maine Municipal Association, put in a bill to get rid of that. It has not come to the floor yet. It was a divided report. But I make the point that it's not, all it does is just, it doesn't serve any real purpose, and actually the assessor that I was working with, Justin Hennessy from Topsom, says that actually he spends a lot of time explaining it, like why you can get an exemption for being blind, and you can get an exemption for, I think, I can't remember what the other one was. Veteran, but right away, as soon as you move here, but this one you have to wait, so, I will keep you posted on that. I'm just gonna, I don't know where budget stuff is, so I'd love to take your feedback on like what kind of priorities you want me to pay attention to, but the budget is sort of still in great flux. Let's see. I also started to make a list of proposed cuts to education and libraries and food to schools, but then the list got too long, and so I don't really know where any of that is. A lot of those things have been, are in the courts. What I was told with the schools, and you probably know better than I do, since you're more closely associated with your school budget, what I was told by Congresswoman Pingree, someone from the governor's office, and I think Aaron Fry. Anyway, I was told by a bunch of people that to just sort of have the school budgets go forward as is, and not to make any plan Bs for, what if all this money goes away, and that makes me a little nervous, but those are people that seem to know more than I do. I am also working on, but I don't have anything to show for it yet, some way of dealing with minimum receiver schools. I worked closely with two people in West Bath, but the problem was that the education committee decided to punt this year. There was a big study that came out, but they decided to do nothing with it, and so now it's pushed off for another year. It's a lot more, largely it's about the funding formula, the essential programs and services. So I haven't even seen the final report, because MEPRI, this organization that does all this research for them, seems to want to shove it out in little dribs and drabs, so I've actually not seen much of that. There are a lot of aggressive housing bills coming out.
There was one that was, our planning board, chair pointed out about. I can't remember the specifics, but it was another one where it was kind of like overruling the local stuff, and, there was like an elevation.
Is that
Waiver.
18?
It's 18, it's,
Okay,
yes,
yeah.
it's speak effective,
But-
Bill, he's back.
But still, it's,
Yeah, yeah.
some of the language where we don't have public water or public sewer, a lot of that, I think we're exempted from anyway.
I think so, yeah, although I think that one of those bills, and there's a bunch of them, so I thought I would wait till it all sorted out. I think it hasn't come finalized in committee, is that it's without public water, or, if you have public water or sewer, all these things. But they also seem, at least in some of these, mention if you have a growth district. And I think you guys have a growth district. No, you don't? Okay, well,
I don't think so.
we
We
had to
don't-
put one in on our comp plan.
Well, I don't know if we ever really got to that point in the
Yeah,
comp
I-
plan.
Yeah, right. I think you're right, John. I think that there is a section of the comp plan that is forced to identify a growth
Yeah,
district. I'm pretty sure.
okay.
And I think we had a lot of trouble with that because we weren't interested in growth, but we went with already congested areas, probably 5 islands. I don't know how you could grow 5 islands, but that's we should look back at it, but I think you're right.
Absolutely.
I know it came up
Yeah,
in the course of the comprehensive plan.
yeah, I sort of, we had to identify one as well when we did ours, and I sort of remember in Georgetown, that if the area they may have identified might have been like right around here.
Mhm.
But
Could be.
Yeah.
yeah,
Could be.
so,
We'll dive in.
yeah, and I'll keep you posted on, because I obviously have a vested interest also in these housing bills, and there are a bunch of pieces. I think one that was part of this bill that went away is there was going to be some kind of Uber state board of appeals, like if you went to the planning board and you lost, and you went to the local zoning board of appeals and you lost, then you could just take it to the state. And it was something that I worked with MMA on years ago when this whole thing was first coming up. We opposed it. It showed up in at least one of the bills, but I understand that that part at least has been removed. So, yeah, I'm glad that Bob
Mhm.
has kept an eye on that.
Did you want to touch on your county piece just a little bit?
Yeah,
Ahead of
yeah,
that? It's
yeah.
good background.
Yeah, receivers. So there was a bill this year that passed to allow county commissioners to come up to consider and develop alternate payment schedules. And because I wanted to do something last year with Saginaw County, just from Woolwich's perspective, and it turned out that statute declares that it has to be one payment. And so this bill passed that allowed the county commissioners to establish new ones. Doesn't require them to work with any of the towns, and so you may have gotten an email from our town
Yes.
administrator. I asked her to reach out to all of the towns in the county to see what you were heading, what the interest was, because we would benefit greatly from twice a year. And so that's what we've heard from all the other towns in the county. And so I thought if that was also true in your case, if we could, somehow work up a strategy and talk to the county commissioners and say, we'd really like you to do this, and then we'll take other steps if they decide not to, because I have one more year left. So, but what's your thoughts about?
I know that we have to take out a tax anticipation note to pay the county bill most years.
Yeah,
And that's interest that's on Georgetown taxpayers that,
yeah. So their argument is they make money on the interest that they get. I mean, I had this discussion with the county administrator last year. But we as well, for the first time, have taken out a tax anticipation note. And so I think I'm hoping that there's anyway, that's my plan, is to sort of take this information to the county, and so whatever good information.
and I think Bronwyn's hand's
Yeah.
been popping up.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that I don't see any reason that the towns should pay interest and borrow money in order to pay this tax. We're the people that raise their money. They don't do the property tax. We do. It's our citizens who pay it. And if there's interest to be paid, they should be paying it. I realize that would come back to us too. But
Right.
it's like if they're saying that we make money on this, that's ridiculous. That's just outrageous. If they need, the payments might be staggered, different towns at different times. If they have a problem, meeting their bills, if it's a
Yeah.
cash flow issue. But I don't see any reason that if there's a loan to be taken, I don't see why it shouldn't be taken by the county instead of each of the
Right.
12 towns or even if there are only 6 of us that have to do it.
Right, and I don't know, I agree with you, Bronwyn, I think it's a cash flow problem for us too. And
Exactly.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah,
And it's just so they can make interest off it, that's kind of a
right,
slap in the face.
right, so they may come back and say, well, now we have to take out a tax anticipation note, but at least it would be shared.
And I
Right.
think twice a year you can plan for.
Yeah, Yeah.
But I know that us with the AOS 98, we make monthly payments to the AOS and there's a way and that's not anywhere near what I heard the ask, because
yeah,
at the county budget meeting, Jason Shaw had brought up, well, what about 2? And
yeah,
it was very swiftly pushed back with, well, we need to model first and find out a map of cash
okay.
flow
Yeah.
but that's good
Okay.
data to work with.
They have a year to work.
as far as I'm concerned.
But for us, it's also not just the interest that we wind up paying. It's the $1,200 or $1,300 in legal fees for us to get the legal opinion for the bank, you know what I mean? There's other expenditures.
When you
Excuse
take
me, that are
out-
included,
yeah.
that are required when you take
Yeah.
out the TAN.
Yeah,
And those are, even though there's no way that
Yeah.
the bank's not getting its money, you still have to have that legal opinion,
that's interesting.
which is just,
Yeah.
it's.
Yeah.
a bunch
So
of
again,
real-
why have 10 different legal
Exactly.
opinions instead of one for the county.
Right, agreed,
Right.
agreed.
Okay, this is good. I'll be back in touch with you about how best to do that. I guess the thing, since you talked about the derelict boats, is that I'm working with harbor masters, agriculture, conservation and forestry, and a couple of other local aid groups to present a bill to the legislature next year on that. I think what we're leaning towards, it doesn't help us this year, obviously. I think what we're leaning towards is some kind of registration fee for boats that would go into a fund. Which is the sort of the funding part, but the other part that I actually kind of like is coming from a guy who works in submerged lands,
Oh.
John Knoll. Do you know?
Name sounds familiar.
Anyway, he's been looking at Florida's
That's,
statute, right?
one of the other people in the, planning board found Florida's and passed it around, and I
Okay,
happened to,
good.
so I've seen that, and that's just kind of interesting.
Oh, good, where you can't like you get her, if you don't pay for it, you for the removal, like you can't get a driver's license.
It's
can't
pretty
get
stiff,
it.
yeah.
Yeah, there's like, that's the stick part.
Mhm.
So anyway, I'll be working on that, starting to work on that in the summer, so that's good to know that.
Yeah, Bob Ardlich found it
Okay.
and popped it
Great.
up on the, popped up
Oh,
in one of
great.
the emails, so
Okay.
it was pretty interesting.
Oh, great. I guess one last thing is that, I know you were gonna ask about, fund road repairs.
127.
I know. The good news is, when I drove down from Dresden, they've already started doing something.
really?
down there,
Wow,
up there, yeah,
Yeah.
but it's still a ways
Yeah.
from here.
I mean, there, I had heard a rumor that, since Woolwich, the Woolwich section between the water line or the gas line or whatever went
Yeah.
in was a lot worse off than they had originally anticipated. They weren't sure whether they were gonna be able to make it all the way down to Georgetown.
Oh.
Just, that
Oh,
was,
yeah,
that was,
yeah.
yeah,
I have not heard.
well, that, and maybe that was just
Yeah,
rumor and conjecture, I don't
okay,
know,
okay.
but,
it's still on the work plan. I didn't have time today to double check.
is it,
I did hear a rumor from somebody in Aroustic that she had been talking, this was sort of like third hand, that and maybe it's because the Aroustic project is specific to resilience and like raising the road, that they might, because of what's happening at the federal level, they might be putting that off.
Mhm.
But I haven't found that out yet either. But it's, I mean, so paving, right, as you know, is, 5/8. And it's,
Yeah.
and it also includes Seguinland Road, so that
Oh, yeah.
huge mess that's right there.
Mhm.
For a little while, well,
I got 3 more years of plowing right now as the contract stands, and
yeah,
I would really, if it isn't done, we probably should have put another, charge of money in the bid just because of the damage that the road's gonna do to
Yeah.
the equipment, and
Yeah.
that's, I mean, that's a huge concern
yeah,
for us doing the
I
road.
mean, the whole road, not
The-
just that one.
We have the
intersection.
contract from, basically the Rouseck Woolwich Bridge.
Yeah.
We're doing Rouseck and Georgetown,
okay.
so that whole
Yeah.
section, and I mean, it
Yeah.
is horrible.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
I,
having just driven down.
Yeah,
that way. Yeah.
and I would just flag that when we talk about the corner at Seguinland and Reed State Park, we're about to see 100,000 visitors traveling
know,
down the
I
roads
know.
and over those potholes.
Yeah, but they were starting, I'm hoping that they just sort of
It's,
go right back down, but I will also double check and also double check that it's actually not affected by
Mhm.
federal funding uncertainties. That's all I have.
pretty much
What
covers,
do you guys
covers
want?
my questions.
I just wanted to say thank you again for your help navigating state government branches and helping us get the answer from the Department of Conservation that
Oh, you,
was
okay.
very elusive for us to find, and they were
Okay.
able to get right to the heart of it, so.
Oh, good,
Thank you.
and, cause I read that answer and I was like, I don't know what that means, but I'm hoping you guys did. And I was glad I nudged her again, because she had actually kind of gotten it buried, but once she got back on it, I think she had an answer for you.
Within the day.
Yeah, so, no, that's great, good, so is that the answer that you wanted?
That is the answer that helps
Okay.
us.
Okay, good. So what else, so I'm paying attention to housing stuff, tax stuff, other things that
Like I say, you
Tomorrow,
covered everything
yeah.
that I had.
I see Bronwyn is
Yeah.
about to
The
hop
whole,
in.
the whole issue of home rule and the cavalier way in which certain legislators appear to want to abolish it and just say, okay, this is what we're going to do, and this is how, you know, here are the orders, stand up and salute. That's very, very unmained.
Yeah.
It's absolutely not in the tradition of towns, and it's destructive of smaller communities where people really do spend a lot of volunteer time
Yeah.
trying to figure out how to make things work for everyone in town.
Yeah.
So I can understand that this attitude might come from larger communities with bigger staff where there's there's a planning staff, et cetera, et cetera. I understand that there's a belief that not in my backyard keeps affordable housing from being built, but that's not the only reason. And it's as if they've focused on that as the one thing they need to try and deal with, when in fact, it boggles my mind to figure out how any developer would want to build affordable housing in Georgetown. Not that we don't want it, not even that we don't need it, but where is the transportation? Where's the work? Where, I just don't see that. Where's the medical support? So,
Yeah. Yeah.
but the whole idea that we're just going to wipe out this hundreds of year tradition of governing ourselves. And
Yeah, I agree. There's an unfortunate, um, perception among some on that housing committee, that small towns are the problem. And it drives me crazy, and it's sort of like, I can't stand up every time, just when she's trying to explain something, but it's like, but it's a belief that is held by many on that committee, and so I do my best sort of when I can, but yeah.
we
Uh,
appreciate that, Allison,
yeah,
but I just,
yeah,
that
yeah,
it's a larger problem than just a
yeah.
particular bill, I think.
Yes, yeah. And so I had a conversation with Hannah Pingree recently, who, as you may or may know, is considering running for governor. And I brought this up. And it's like, okay, because I know she's interested in affordable housing, and I explained that very thing that you just described, Bronwyn, about, like, it's not, there are lots of people trying to figure these out. I told her about the water grant that you guys got jointly with Aroustic, and it's like figuring that out. It's not just about climate resilience. It's about saltwater intrusion. It's about too many wells. And so I hope she heard it.
Well, I have to say that the whole resiliency grant program really does seem to recognize local
Yeah.
control
Yeah.
and local
Yeah.
input. It seems to be designed for smaller towns, or at least designed to include them. And so to the extent that she's been responsible for that program, I think that's
Yeah.
very hopeful. But the other thing we're all worried about is the budget stuff.
Yeah.
Just
And as
because
soon as,
it's, all the cuts from FEMA, and I don't understand how anybody expects to respond to emergencies or the kind of storms we had a year, 18 months ago, whatever it was. Um, certainly saved us.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. And I was going to reach out to, the county EMA. I don't know if you guys do.
Bill
talk to-
Davis.
Yeah. Do you talk to him on a regular basis?
Yes.
To sort of, because I think they've undergone a few
Changes.
but I can't remember what they are. But yeah, I wonder about that also, right?
And along that same line, if you hear of cuts, don't necessarily just assume we've heard,
Okay,
because, it's good to hear it twice, not necessarily good to hear that, but any information passing down this way is very helpful.
yeah. I did, so you actually related to that, because you reached out to me on the navigational buoys. Is the town sort of expressing an opinion about?
I am hopeful the select board blesses a very strongly worded letter that was
Okay.
written and
Okay,
getting that in well before.
okay,
We voted at the last, or the select board voted at the last meeting to take a position.
okay.
So now it's just getting them to sign off on
Okay,
that.
great. I turned the letter that the Marine Resources Committee did into a joint resolution that I'm trying to get as an open jacket, which means that any legislator who usually it's limited to 8 people, but this, if it's an open jacket, everybody will have the opportunity to sign on to it. So we'll see. There'll at least be 8 people on it.
And Woody also commented
Yes,
on that
right.
as
Oh,
well.
good,
Harbor
good.
master.
Good.
There was a bunch of stuff in the legislature about paid family medical leave.
Yes.
Where does that stand now?
There were a bunch of bills to
Right.
make changes to it. I
Yeah.
actually signed on to a bipartisan one to sort of, the only bipartisan one to sort of,
Is that
Um,
Tiffany's?
yeah, to sort of make, I can't remember the specific changes to it. But, it hasn't come up yet. I don't, yeah, I can get you that. Do you get stuff from the chamber? Because-
We're not on the chambers.
Okay,
list.
they sent something out that listed how the bill finally came out. There were some changes to it that I'm thinking I would vote for those things. It doesn't change, I mean, it changes. I'll have to get it to you.
Thank you.
You're
I
welcome.
was just curious
Yeah.
to see what was happening.
Yeah, there's a strong sense to, they spent a lot of work, time and work getting it to here, and so it's just getting started. There will be a lot of pressure to just sort of like, okay, we'll just let it, see how it goes. But I think that the things that we ended up with in the bill that I signed on to seem reasonable. And they don't see, it does not undo anything. So what did you guys do with paying, are you guys paying half of, for your employees, are you paying half of
The town is actually covering the
the whole
employee,
thing?
the
Okay,
employee and the employer half until June 30. And then
okay,
we're starting to take the other half from
Okay.
from the folks.
okay,
So because we weren't sure how it was that,
Yeah.
we put it in budget
Yeah.
last year
yeah,
to cover that
Yeah, yeah.
until June 30.
yeah. I don't
You know,
know that that's
so-
one, I think that will still be optional to, town, employers can do.
Yeah.
Pay the whole thing if they want to, but, I'll send you the thing that I just got from the chamber.
Thank you. Thank you.
But, yeah. We paid half.
Were there
Town employees.
any other thoughts or comments, questions for Representative Hepler? If not, thank you so much. And this has been as exciting as Maine history class at U of I.
Yeah,
Go
maybe-
Beavers.
yeah, all right, we're gonna go back and see what the school budget's gonna do.
Thanks, Allison.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys. Yeah.
Thank you.
And so that concludes our lone scheduled appointment tonight. And before we move on to minutes, I know Aria had a couple of suggested changes.
Just on the May 13, and I sent you an email, Tyler, 2 very small ones, the May 13 minutes. So I don't know if you want to take it up when we address May 13, but otherwise I can, I'd move for the approval of the first 2 minutes, the April, what is it, the 27th? I don't have it in front of me, and the May 6th
April
meeting.
22nd and May, yep.
Okay. I'd move for those 2 as drafted.
Is there a second?
Second?
All in favor of that?
And that is 3-0. Thank you. And I'm pulling up those minutes now, Aria, and I appreciate you sending along that email as well. So those changes on the 13th?
And the 13th, on my report, it indicated that the Board of Appeals had not met yet. I think the language is it had not met yet, and that really ought to be again, had not met again, because they have met. I think the confusion was on the Harbor Committee. The second sentence relates to the Harbor Committee. And I think
Yeah.
what I had said was the Board of Appeals has not met again. And I'm not sure if the Harbor Committee has met since our last select board meeting.
Thank you, thank you.
That's what I was trying to articulate. So that's one change related to the report. And then secondly, I believe it was me who moved for the approval of the Susan Hess abatement, and Bronwyn seconded it, which is the opposite of what it is in the minutes. And I recall that because initially Bronwyn had abstained
I think you're right. Yes,
before Van Tynen had done his assessment. So
Right.
she didn't want to be the mover. I was the movant, and she provided the second on that abatement.
Thank you for those eagle eye catches. That's awesome.
Certainly. Thanks.
So
And
move
with
to-
that, yeah, go
yeah.
ahead.
I'll move to approve the May 13th meeting minutes with those amendments. Or as
And I'll
amended.
And I'll second.
Everybody in favor?
And that is unanimous. Very good. There were no items in your packet for review. I did want to update the board on abatements. In the month of June, we will be having abatements at every one of our select board meetings. I just wanted to flag that right at the tail end of the abatement period, we're now up to 5 requests to work through from 4 separate property owners. Of those 4, I just want to flag that there's at least one that I definitely think will need to go on to Bill Van Tynen. And I am expecting by the end of the week, there will be another abatement that I've worked with Appalachian Mountain Club on. They've asked a lot of clarifying questions. And should we receive that abatement by May 30, I will still do all of my analysis. But that is definitely one that'll need to head on to Bill Van Tynen because there are some good tweaks. I just wanted to update the board that while we've had a lull on abatements, we are working through some of those analysis, and it'll be a good learning curve for whoever the new person is at the end of June on the abatement process. Were there any questions there on assessing items? If not, I would just note the following items were provided as correspondence. We received a legislative update from Senator Denise Tepler. At the last meeting, I mentioned the Maine Climate Council newsletter that had our grant award in it, and that it would appear on this agenda, as well as the subsequent Maine Climate Council newsletter. The state of Maine Bureau of Motor Vehicles has put out a notice about exempt plates and the 25-year mark on exemptions of titles and so on. So this is some great data about what's going on, and we'll keep folks apprised. Georgetown Volunteer Fire Department at the budget hearing had put together an informational handout that I just wanted to make sure the full, Bronwyn?
My question is whether so is that handout just informational for us, or is it intended to be handed out at the town meeting?
It was handed out at the budget hearing. Chief Whalen had put it together. I imagine it will be also available at the budget hearing. But I wanted to make sure the full board got a copy as well, given that it was some good data.
Okay, thanks.
And the Maine Municipal Association is putting on a Freedom of Access Act training in the month of, I believe it was June. But if you are interested in attending that class, either in person or by Zoom, let me know. I would remind all board members that there will be mandatory reading of a packet regarding FOA coming out following town meeting that just certifies that we are up to speed on freedom of access. Last, 2 others, Sweetser sent along their annual report. I have copies in your inbox here at town office. And Habitat for Humanity sent along their newsletter monthly. There were no continuing items as of now. I just wanted to flag that I did do a check today to make sure none were hiding anywhere. We've not received any of the Maine waste discharge licenses renewal or approval since the end of March. So I just wanted to share with folks that we're keeping an eye there, but we are good. And I would turn this over to John for his board member and committee update.
All right, I had a bunch of things passed between these last 2 meetings. Cemetery Committee met on the 15th. And they're still trying to figure out how they're gonna fix the wall down there in 5 Islands, and they've actually are gonna start a fundraising, may have started a fundraiser to get the money so they can have all the wall done at once rather than just pieces of it or portions. That was that, and they were considering they might add something to the ordinance about number of stones per site, because I don't think I can't remember exactly what it was, whether they're allowed to or whether they're not allowed. Or
They wanted to not allow more than one, I
yeah,
think.
that's,
Yeah.
so there's gonna be looking at doing a change for that. Shellfish Committee had a special meeting because the DMR or the powers that be, we're looking at closing down Saginaw Bay after a 1 inch rainfall for 2 weeks at a time. And they're trying to get that figured out a little bit better because some of the water samples have been a little funky. There's one that's running high, but it's up by the campground. And the other 2 points aren't, so they're hoping to just get a smaller portion of the bay shut down for these water and the rain events, because that's our primary primary spot where they do all the clamming, and that's a huge part of their summer income, if not all of their summer income right there. So they were working on that, and that's still in progress as far as I'm aware. And TOPMB had a meeting, and they are it was quite a bit of stuff going over what to do with, first off, the old stone schoolhouse. There was a lot of discussion with the neighbors, just so it doesn't go into a state of disrepair as it's done before, but the neighbors are at least helping keeping up with some of the stuff from time to time and trying to figure out what and how we can take care of that. That's an ongoing process. And they got I guess they're gonna have a gazebo down there at the library. Yeah.
Which
so-
is big enough that it needs a permit, and we've deduced that the town will not charge the TOPMB for the permit application.
Yep, and the planning board, they just did a couple of things, and they're gonna talk about their survey next time, I believe.
Perfect.
I think that covers it. There's quite a bit of stuff for me.
Any questions for John?
John, on the 1 inch rainfall closing of the flats, is that, are they saying that that would be automatic?
Yes, that instead of when they have the big falls, there's a certain amount of time that flats are closed anyway, just because of the water will overwhelm some of the sewer waste treatment plants in the Kennebec.
Mm.
And so there's a shutdown for like a day or two, but what they're looking to do is a 14-day, which the river flushes itself out much quicker than that. And it would just, you get a couple of thunderstorms and you can get that much rain, and it could conceivably close all the flats down for the majority of the season. So they were just trying to work around to see if they can figure out doing some of their own tests, and they can actually tell whether it's from a failed septic site, whether it's like canine, just because there's a lot of dogs in the campground, or whether it's just like the birds, like all the geese and stuff like that. So they've got some work they're gonna put into it, the clam committee itself, just to see what they can do to get more information for the DMR, or once again, the entity that is doing that.
Yeah, okay, thanks. That's helpful. Am I
Brian,
up?
you are.
Well, the Conservation Commission has prepared a document, a sort of a permit application for use of conservation areas. It's not, I don't think it's quite ready to come to the select board for review and approval. The impetus for that really comes from a couple of issues with the school. The project that was tapping maple sugar trees, and there was another one, I forget the specifics of it, but it occurred to us that as the TOPMB has an application process to use any town-owned property that they manage for any kind of organized event, that should be I guess the other thing with the Conservation Commission was the playground at the opposite the community center, which came as a surprise. And I think they were surprised that that there might be a question. So we've tried to answer those questions. I'm I've reviewed it. It's really very good, but I think we're a little concerned about how to publicize it because we don't want to suggest that everybody should suddenly have an event at the trailhead. It's just that if you're planning something more than just a walk in the woods with your family, it's possible that you would need a permit or permission, put it that way. So that's the current active issue there, I think. They've resolved memorandums of agreement with the school and with the community center for use of the facilities that are on the trails. The Solid Waste Committee received a report from, since our last meeting, received a report from the inspector from the Department of Environmental Protection, which was discouraging because it repeated a bunch of violations that have been cited before. They're pretty minor, and they're all associated with the Universal Hazardous Waste Building. And the way the stuff is stored, the way it's inventoried, that there are other items in that building that they feel shouldn't be there. So I'm sure that will be addressed at their meeting, not, well, the second week of June. And we'll have to remedy that situation. Otherwise, everything is chugging along.
And I
as
would
far
just
as I can-
add, Bronwyn, we did
Mhm.
receive a request through the school to be able to pass through some of the transfer station site to get to a trail. And we worked with the chairs of the committee to be able to specifically have an area that folks could pass. And Allison and Dave had blessed that. So
Well,
by
that's
checking
news.
in,
I don't have any
checking-
news. You have all the news. What can I tell you?
I just wanted to share, so that
Okay,
folks at the
thank you.
school are, yep.
Thank you. That's it from me.
Aria?
Hi, yes, okay, so last week we had the Working Waterfront met for its initial meeting, and we Mike Farina is the chair of that committee and has been working hard about on the Working Waterfront ordinance and just in the early stages of that, but more importantly, has started developing a mission statement. And so we had about 3 or 4 committee members attending. We did hear to Jonathan's points about the concerns of about the clam flats at the campground and, you know, keeping an eye on that. So that is something that we talked some about with Marissa, who of course has some expertise that we don't have. And so that was a good information for us to digest as we talked in that committee meeting. The next day was the school committee meeting. And coming up will be the rec committee meeting will be meeting next Tuesday on the 3rd. And the next school committee meeting is June 18. Board of Appeals meets as is necessary. And I'm sorry, don't know when the Harbor Committee meets, but I'll report back when I do. Thanks.
Thank you, Aria. Any questions on those reports? If not, I'll jump quickly into a town administrator update. First item, as we now have closed out liaison reports, I just ask board members to be thinking about the liaison hats that we'll be wearing next year, because in June we'll be resetting who's on what committee and a whole bunch of board organizational. So just keep that in mind. I wanted to flag as well that Maine Revenue Services Property Tax Division will be in town on June 4 to do the closeout of the audit process that follows after the statistical reval we had. They actually are supposed to do an annual audit, but this is the first one that I will experience since being here as administrator. And so I just flagged that the morning of June 4, I will likely be unavailable as I'll be working with them. I wanted to touch base briefly as where the pink chairs in the hallway, the community center, we had previously voted to donate them to, and they have courteously declined our generous offer, and so I just wanted to check in with the board. Are we comfortable disposing with the bulk of those chairs? So we can make that entranceway look a little bit better, or are we thinking we've gotta hold on to them? I know we were gonna hold on to 6, so folks have places to seat. But I'm very comfortable getting them off the transfer station if the board is comfortable. They have lasted well past their prime.
I've got no problems with that.
I don't either. And
It's okay.
yeah.
Perfect. I wanted to
Tyler?
mention,
Oh, go ahead. Go ahead. I'll come back to it. Go ahead.
okay, I wanted to flag that I spoke with Dolores Weiss, and she is eager to join us the morning of town meeting to be presented with the Boston Post cane. She's excited to receive this awesome honor in front of her family, friends, and importantly, neighbors. And it will be our Chairman Collins's last item of business as a member of the select board to be able to do so.
And will that
so
happen? Will that happen before the meeting or at the end of the meeting?
That will
When will that
happen
be?
before the meeting at 9 o'clock. We are gonna present
Okay.
with a cane, and then on legislative time, because town meeting is the legislative body for the day, probably kick off a few minutes after.
Okay, good.
And as we approach June, I just wanted to touch base that we'll be revisiting the ATV access road on Martown Road in West Georgetown. And I just wanted to poll the board in how we wanted to proceed. Is that something that we should send out letters to everyone in the neighborhood again to see how it worked? Or is it something that we have yet to hear any real feedback on? So I imagine if it was the races of Martown, we would have heard by now, but I just wanted to check in and just flag that that is coming up, and we did say we would revisit in the month of June.
Yeah, I haven't heard anything negative. I mean, I would have expected if there was something, we definitely would have heard about it.
Right.
I'm not sure that we need to send letters, but I think we need to announce, whether
Yeah.
it's perhaps at town meeting, maybe some of them would be there, through the through the email lists that we have, and on the website that comments are solicited in regard to this whatever it is that we agreed to.
And we
Right?
can slate that for the end of June then, so we have time to announce it at town meeting. GCC is also requested to close down Old Schoolhouse Road on July 4th from 2 p.m. until the conclusion of the parade. In the past, the board gave me the permission to authorize that, but I just wanted to check in that there were no objections.
Would you like a motion or?
We don't need, I just wanted to make sure we were all good, and if there are no objections, I can just send it on, or we can do a motion as well, make it super official.
Up to you. I think it's fine.
Perfect, so we'll get that off, and then the very last thing, Eros Oysters in Town reached out today and wanted to invite the town office staff, transfer station staff, fire department staff, as well as the select board to a tour of their facility on June 13th at 4 p.m. So I just wanted to flag that on June 13th at 4 p.m. rather. If folks are interested in attending the tour of Eros Oysters, just let me know by middle of next week so I can give them a head count. That is a Friday evening. And with
Time?
that.
What time,
4
Tyler?
4 p.m.
4 p.m. Okay.
And with that, I would turn this over to the finance director for her. Oh, Aria, right, yes.
Yes, I made a mistake because I was traveling today, and I missed today's Working Waterfront Committee meeting. So if you could just note that in the minutes, they had one again today. Mike Farina is on fire.
Yes, he is. Thank you, Aria. Mary?
Okay, just a few little things for me. As Bronwyn already mentioned, the Conservation Commission is in receipt or is part of a groundwater vulnerability assessment or grant. We met, that group met up in Arousik last week. We just pretty much went over the finances and they've got a good guy that works for our old auditors for Purdy Powers. Who is tracking everything, has done up a bunch of spreadsheets already. So we just had a meeting. The town of Arousik is the one that was the lead on that grant application. Therefore, they're the ones that have received the money, and they will hold on to it. and pay the bills and just separate out the reporting. We'll be noting it. I'll discuss it with our auditors so that we can note it, you know, it can be noted on our financial statements as well. As Jonathan had mentioned, the cemetery district trustees met and are interested in doing fundraising for the, the stone wall in Five Islands. So they've asked whether or not they can do that and whether, so I've told them that they can certainly fundraise, that would be a dedicated revenue. And pretty much the town on property management board has come back with the same request for this Old Stone Schoolhouse. So we have a couple of different fundraisers, which all I will do is deposit the money and show that as a special revenue, and you know, for that directed purpose. Last week, I believe it was last Monday, I received draft copies of June 30, 2024 audit. So last Thursday, the auditors got pretty much a one-page list of questions from me, which they have not gotten back to me yet. I expect they will soon. I sent it out like 5:30 on Thursday. So, and then so I'm still working on that, obviously. And then the last question that I had for the board was, the budget hearing document, that we presented at the budget hearing in May, on May 14th, has an FAC recommendation column on it. And I didn't know if you wanted me to take that column out prior to town meeting and maybe put warrant article number or something else in that spot. I didn't know if it was necessary to leave the FAC recommendations in. I don't think we have in the past. So I just wanted verification that, you know, it was okay to take that column out.
Can I ask how the the numbers for the budget are in the warrant, right?
Yes.
And there are no columns in there with or is this about a column for the FAC in the warrant?
No,
Or is this a separate?
Normally
Okay.
we just have, this is the budget document that we presented at the budget hearing.
Yeah,
And in this document, there's a column that says FAC recommendation.
right.
We also have a stack of these that we, you know, and any updates that have been made since then. We have a stack of these usually at town meetings so that people can look, you know, in gross detail.
Okay.
So I didn't
So
know if
I
you
would-
wanted
I
me to
would-
take the column off.
Yeah, I would move that we take that column off.
All right, I would agree, but I wanted to get your okay to, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. And
Just,
if
you know,
what interested me in your comment was the idea that you could put the warrant article number beside something or other, because I
Yeah.
think that people have difficulty in transferring from one document to the other. And the
right,
one we're actually voting on is not this elaborate budget, it's
Right.
the warrant. So if it's possible to connect the two with you know, with a reference,
okay,
I would think that would be very helpful.
okay,
But I don't
right.
think it should take, you know, 20 hours of your time.
Oh, no, okay, good enough, we'll eliminate the column. And then Tyler and I will work on somehow getting the article numbers there. So that's good, okay. And other than that, unless anyone's have any questions, I don't have anything else for you tonight. So,
Thank you, Mary.
anybody?
Next,
No?
next up is Chief Whalen, who I see has popped his camera on. He was ready for this.
Thanks, Tyler. Yes, just a update from the fire department. We're at looks like 52 calls for the year so far. It's a little bit below the last few years we've been at this time of year. Unfortunately for our call volume, we're just didn't have any of those big spring or summer storms to jack up our numbers. So that's good for us, but that's where we're at right now for call volume wise. We are still working on getting the new folks we brought in this year, getting them trained up. We just had one of our EMS trainings last night down at the station, and next month for our EMS training, we'll have our medical director come down and be with us in person and go over some reviews, things like that. So it's really nice to have her direct participation with our department. It's we're really lucky to have her for what we got. So that'd be for EMS. We conducted a basic pump operators class, which I instructed over a couple evenings, and then we were out all day Saturday, working on the sequence of pumping and basic pumps, to move water from one place to another. So it went really well. We had 6 folks from Georgetown, 2 from Rousick, and 1 from Harpswell attend the class. So it was pretty well attended event. It was great. We also did 2 Saturdays ago. We did some live fire training up at the Bath training facility to get all of our interior folks that we can some experience with the packs and on air and boiling water, that kind of thing. So we partnered up with Woolwich and Rousick for that training, and it went really, really well. We got a bunch of evolution. Everyone got a bunch of different rounds, different positions, that kind of thing. So we've been hitting training pretty hard. As far as new folks here, we actually talked to some people on earlier this week. I handed out 3 applications for the fire department. I got 1 back, still waiting on the other 2. We'll kind of see where that ends up, but looks pretty promising. So we'll see where that goes. We're still looking for 2 per diem members or 2 per diem folks to staff positions that we've got open right now. But so far, I've had some conversations with a bunch of people, but nothing's really panned out for finally yet anyway. So we'll still keep hitting it, and we'll keep doing that. As far as some equipment goes, as far as I know, all the vehicles are in good shape. I haven't had any major issues recently with that. We'll knock on some wood right now, just in case. We did have we lost a gas meter last week where one of the sensors failed on it, and it's a model they don't make anymore, so it's not repairable, unfortunately, and so we'll have to get a new one to replace that. The other one also has a bad sensor on it. There's 4 different sensors on it, so the other 3 are still working fine. So we're working on getting that one repaired, hopefully in the next week or so. But because the other ones now need to get a loaner in, so they're not without. So we got that. We got 2 packs that we have to get fixed up, and we got about 8 of our SCBA air bottles out for hydrostatic testing, which has to be done every 5 years anyway. So those are all getting tested, so they'll be back in service hopefully in a week or 2. Yeah. So we had the plant sale this past Saturday in the morning from 9 to noon. David said they netted about $1,200 from that. So big thanks to everyone who came out and got some plants to spread around town, and hopefully keep the deer away from them. We have our open house scheduled for Sunday, July 13th, upcoming. So we'll have open to the public. We'll have some snacks, some food there. We encourage everybody to drop by, say hi, meet us, put a face to the name, check out our equipment. We can tell you how we do things. Should be a good time. So that'll be, like I said, Sunday, July 13th. I believe it's 11 to 1, middle of the day there. So, and to wrap up, I've had several people recently ask me about doing the annual auction again. And unfortunately, that's an event that, while loved throughout town and beyond, became in the last few years kind of prohibitively expensive to put on. Getting the tent rental, all the equipment set up, things like that, became quite a bit more expensive than it ever used to be. So that being said, it kind of, kiboshed by COVID too, was pretty much the nail in the coffin there. And so we haven't done it for a bunch of years, but I would always encourage anyone who is asking about it or interested in helping out in a way that may not necessarily be responding to calls. Please let me know, or reach out to any department member. We'll get you in touch with the auxiliary. They are really running low on folks, and could definitely use a hand, putting together any kind of events, and more hands, the better. And if we had more people, I would say that we have a much better chance of doing that event in the future. I'm not going to guarantee anything, but if we had the people right now that have the time available, we could get it done. But unfortunately, we're not in that position right now. So that's where we're at for right now. So unless you guys have any questions.
Well, I was glad to see that you weren't practicing in the snow over here in the parking lot this weekend when I went by. So it was raining, but at least it wasn't snow.
Yeah, it wasn't too bad. We actually moved that training day from 2 weeks before, where we got 2.5 inches of rain on that Saturday, which would have been a bit much even for us.
Thank you, Brian. It sounds as if things are well in hand and going pretty well, except for the administrative people you'd like to hire.
Well, like I said, it's an ongoing process. I knew it would be tough because we're all the way down here in Georgetown, and we're a small department with low call volume. So we're working on it, but hopefully I'll have a different report for that next month.
Thank you, Brian.
Thanks.
And with that, we will move on into old business, and the first item is seeking approval of a letter to the Coast Guard regarding the opposition to buoy removal. Yes, Bronwyn?
Move to approve your beautiful letter and appreciate Woody's contribution as well.
Absolutely. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
I just have a question. I'm just wondering about that word in the first paragraph says it's not modernization, it's reckless. It's recklessness. I guess is anybody wondering if that's a little, is that a bit less diplomatic than we want to be, or do we care about that?
I don't want to be diplomatic. This is a ridiculous idea.
I agree. I just,
and I don't think
fine.
that being diplomatic will gain us anything. Being blunt may not get us anywhere either, but at least we'll feel better.
I've got no problem with the way it's written.
Okay, then I'm going along with it. I'll give the second.
All right.
All right, then everybody in favor?
That is 3-0. All right. The next item was added to the agenda tonight, and that is a determination on the Aroustic funding request regarding the hook, line, and sinker. I know last meeting, the board seemed to have gotten to a point where we almost reached consensus, and then we decided to defer until this meeting. I would say one of the items we were waiting for was on Woolwich and whether or not they would make a decision. And I know Woolwich also deferred action, so we will be the first town responding to this. Yes, Bronwyn?
I move that we respectfully and sympathetically deny a request from Aroustic.
I'll second that. I'm
All right.
in full agreement with you on that one.
And I
Any
really
fur-
appreciate the fact that Allison is working on possible legislation that would ameliorate some of these issues for coastal towns. But I don't think that it will put us or the region in a better position to fork over money at the time. Just makes us a target.
And I
You
see
know,
Aria.
I have obviously been conflicted about this, but I agree. I don't think that this is where we can take our stand because it's at too much exposure for us as a town. And so as much as I'd like to be able to help out and hope that we would be reciprocated, it's not the best decision for us right now. But I would like to put some structure in there if we can make some inroads into their ability to plan for the future.
So we'll vote on it. I'm in favor.
All right, and that is a unanimous vote of 3-0. The next item of business is discussion and approval of the town warrant for the proposed town warrant for annual town meeting.
Tyler,
when-
could I suggest that we take these issues out of order because the biggest discussion is about the town warrant. I think we can probably just approve the other stuff and move on.
I like the sound of that.
I mean, we've already had
It's-
some discussion about the county tax payment schedule, and I would move to, I guess, what is it that Allison would like from us?
I think the initial request from the town administrator in Woolwich was looking to see what our town's perspective was on multiple payments, and I knew that Mary and I had a very strong opinion on being in favor of multiple payments, but I didn't want to put that out without checking in with the board.
Well, I'd like
And-
the board to direct you to tell the Woolwich town administrator that we are 100% in favor of multiple payments.
All right.
Yes, I second that. I think it's important.
So is that a motion? I mean,
Yeah.
Okay, all in favor of that motion then?
3-0. Very good. And the next item of business was the approval for Harris Local Government, also known as TRIO, to come and do trainings for both our deputy town clerk and prospective town clerk, Angie Mead. In your packet, I did include a quote from Harris. It was a steep quote of $1,224.32. Of that, $800 is training. The rest are the associated mileage costs and travel time. I would say that I think it's important we get Angie and Kathy professionally trained on the software. But again, I just wanted to note that it is a $1,200 and change cost.
And do we have money for that in the current budget?
Yes.
You can find it, yep.
Then I move that we approve it.
I second it. I think that the training.
All right.
Yeah, we need to have them ready, so everybody
Yeah,
in favor?
we can't survive without it.
I'm in favor.
Very good. And are you perfect? 3-0. And lastly, I wanted just to flag that there is a meeting scheduled for June 10th, which is town election night. Last year, we postponed a meeting that was right about the election time or moved it up. I, quite frankly, am comfortable meeting on June 10th. I think that there's good abatement work to get done. And quite frankly, I don't know by June 3rd that I'd necessarily be in a spot to have all that ready. And so I wanted to put it on the agenda because I know last year we had thoughts about moving things around election time. But I'm comfortable with keeping it election night if the rest of the board was comfortable that direction too.
We didn't have any abatements last year to speak on, so that's what seems to be driving a lot of this stuff. And if that's, I mean, I don't have any problem with it.
I don't either.
So the meeting would still be at 6?
That, yes, though we could push it back if need be.
And the alternative was that you were mentioning would have been to meet a week earlier.
We could have met a week earlier on June 3rd. We could also meet a week after on June 17th and then on the 24th. Initially, I was thinking the 3rd might be a spot the board might want to be, but quite frankly, between the rest of tomorrow and Thursday, I don't know that I'll have 3 abatements fully analyzed for you the way I'm hoping.
No,
for
I
that
wouldn't.
next.
I wouldn't be in favor of June 3rd anyway.
Okay.
If you want to move it, I would move it later, but I can zoom in on the 10th or whatever. Yeah, the 10th.
Yeah.
I think we can make progress that way and have a couple of shorter meetings instead of a marathon.
Amen to that.
I'm fine on the 10th as well.
Perfect. So we will keep the 10th and there's no action needed on that. So we would now jump to the remaining item of business, which is the proposed town warrant. I did send along about 5:30 an updated town warrant that included the school articles. These were sent along today by the school administration and I've gone over with Mary for accuracy. That said, I believe what I'd like to do is go through the highlighted portions that I sent along to the board on Thursday and just check in on a couple of items, because the rest of the warrant, quite frankly, is the budget, and we can go from there. We had highlighted throughout the start time. Historically, Georgetown town meetings start at 9 a.m. I'm very comfortable starting at 9 a.m., but I wanted to make sure that that was the decision of the board. We're good with 9 a.m.?
Yeah, we
Perfect.
don't want it to go through lunch.
And I've been telling everybody 9 a.m., Tyler. That's asked me. So I hope we're going to do it at 9 or I'm in
Well,
big
hey.
trouble.
We'll make that work. Article 15, I had brought up to the board previously in the past. This is the article that allows the select board to dip into the undesignated fund balance for unanticipated expenses and emergencies. I do think that in the coming year, with a lot of questions of funding, this is the article I think that gives the select board a little leeway on at least flexibility on getting bills paid, lights on, if we had to call a special town meeting. And the recommendation I'd have here is a $25,000, which is still a steep number at town meeting, though I think it's one we can defend based on where things stand currently. And I would just note that undesignated fund balance is money that's already been taxed and raised. So it's not like we would be adding an additional 25,000 that we might not need. It just gives the select board the ability to step in should a need arise.
I think it's important to make that point when the warrant, when the article is moved, so that people understand it's not a tax article. It's a authority to use money that the town already has, if we need to use it. And if we don't need to use it, we don't use it, right?
Exactly.
Mary is looking, frowning at me. What am I
No, I'm
saying
not
wrong?
frowning at you, I'm just frowning at something I think I missed. No, go ahead, you're
Oh,
perfectly
okay.
fine, honey. That's
Okay,
perfectly fine.
okay,
No,
so
and I can easily stand up and say, you know, and fight for that 25 at town meeting, you know?
Would that have covered the general assistance? I mean, would that have been like a similar thing
Well-
this past year?
Yeah, well, we added 16,000,
So I mean, but,
so yeah.
and that was above the normal 10, right? Or
So
that number, so.
we wouldn't have been able to do the GA
Right.
because it would have exceeded
Exceeded the
10,000.
Right,
If we'd had 25 in there,
we
then
we
could
would have been able to. I
Right.
guess that's my point. That
Yeah.
would have been a example of when this would have
Right.
helped us.
Yeah.
And that excess money from that GA, just as an example, that we're not gonna use this year because it came down, rolls into fund
Yeah.
balance.
Mhm.
So are
so
we
that, yeah, so
comfortable?
that money that was previously approved is already in this pot.
Right. Right.
Yeah,
So
and it,
are-
yeah, but there's so many things that are at risk, revenue sharing and other health benefits and all kinds of things that I think it's prudent.
Mhm.
So I move that we change that from 10 to 25,000.
I second
And-
that.
Aria seconds.
Alright. All in favor?
All right, that is 3-0. The health balance fund number of 28,680 stands.
Yeah.
So we are good there. Articles 17 and 18, I sought guidance from Maine Municipal Association on crafting the warrant articles related to the making town clerk and making tax collector appointed versus elected. They suggested that we put in a term of a certain period of time. In looking at it, I can see anywhere from 2 to 5 works, but I do think that for this first year, keeping it a 1-year term might be a good way to not change too much too fast for the town. And I had talked with Brahman a little about that today, of a 1-year term on each. Though with this being as open-ended as it was, I wanted to make sure we got board blessing on the direction.
Well, what Tyler and I talked about was how all the other appointments, the code enforcement officer, the fire chief, the shellfish warden, these are annual appointments. And so it seems to me to make sense that this would be an annual appointment. There's also the possibility that once we have the ability to appoint and create a job description and set hours for this person, that there could be a contract involved that might be more than 1 year, but the appointment would still be annual, I guess. That's maybe a slight, I'm not sure about. But I don't think we should appoint for more than a year, at least initially. MMA seemed to think we'd have trouble finding anybody if it was a 1-year appointment. But that's where having a contract of some kind could be helpful. And if the elected clerk chooses to apply and we want her to continue, then it's less of a problem. I mean, we've had people run for this office when they had to campaign and they had to be elected, and it was only a 1-year term. So
I
that's
think
my
one-
thinking. What do you guys think?
I don't think the 1 year is as critical in this town where it's a smaller, it's not as, the turnover, I don't think would be there. So I think once, I don't have a problem with that, I'd go either way, but I mean, I can see the line of thinking on it for that right now. So I don't have any issues with that.
And your thoughts, Aria, are we good with a year or?
I think a year makes sense. I was looking at that term and because we're making the transition, a year makes the most sense. You know, on down the road, we could, increase that up to 2 or 3, but it is an annual appointment. I agree with Bronwyn's comment in that regard. And I think we just start as we've mapped out here.
Perfect. All right, that is good direction. The next article, Article 19, has changed a little bit since it was sent to you. And so the way it's currently written, Article 19, to see if the town will vote by secret ballot to authorize the select board to negotiate and execute an easement deed on terms they deem in the best interests of the town, granting an easement to Melissa Peterson on town-owned property located on map 13U, lot 33, for the purpose of locating and maintaining a subsurface wastewater septic system on the property. So the way Maine Municipal Association has really advised us is that the town needs to give the blessing of the select board to be able to enter into this kind of agreement to negotiate terms. Maine Municipal did have some pause when I shared that there wasn't a cost associated with this transaction, though they have done some more analysis in-house and would ultimately defer to our attorneys, but do see that they can see the argument made for a public benefit, though really a public benefit is only determined in court if it were to go that route. And so I removed the and to appropriate up to blank from blank for any necessary legal or surveying services. We have talked consistently through this process of making sure that the town is not on the hook for fees. That's something that can be dealt with in the negotiation process. And we also have a town attorney, and that line is budgeted quite fully. And so I don't think we need to budget $500 from legal for something that'll work itself out, provided the town blesses this article. And I wanted to make sure to include the secret ballot portion, because I know that was a sticking point for a quorum of the board.
I'm good with this.
Yeah, I think that we've been while we didn't talk about charging these people for the use of the property, we've been very clear from the beginning that the town wasn't paying for any of the design work that would include surveying, et cetera, et cetera. So I think that's better. And the fact that the agreement would have to be negotiated allows us to make that even clearer. If we are going to insist on a survey, they're going to pay for it. Okay, so I'm good with the revision.
And thank you everyone for your indulgence. This has been the most complicated article to ever tackle, and we are getting over the finish line.
Yeah.
In terms of ordinance changes, that was all straightforward. General government comes straight from budget. When we get to the Georgetown Common Schools articles, I would just defer to the text that was sent out in the warrant that went out today. These articles come directly from the schools. I would note the only tweak that I do make is underneath the line, the school committee recommends yes for a series of articles. We did add in what the 24-25 authorized expenditure was. We do that for most of the budget articles, but it was not done with the school articles. So to keep their language, we felt this was a way to just make sure that information is readily transparent to folks. After the
And Tyler,
Yes.
these articles came directly from the superintendent, Bob
Yes.
Kayla, right? Okay, thank you.
Yes,
Yes.
and I know that part of Bob's process, they went legal drafted, and he also had finance and Principal Miller review as well prior to it getting here. So there were many eyes on them, which I think is part of what took it a little bit to get to us.
Thanks.
But beyond the schools, public safety was pretty straightforward. Just bear with me. The county budget is actually down about $46,000 as approved. We've received, a notice from the county administrator that the town of Georgetown should actually be down to. Gotta go to my other document. Hang tight.
What's right there, someone, 1445.
1,445,744, which again is 45,000 and change down from where we were. So the comments made by Bill Webster about needing an amendment potentially on the floor of town meeting, we've got ahead of time here from the county. So I just wanted to flag that that number has changed. And I see you have a thing.
Yeah, I did. That's what I was frowning at, Brahman. Article 57, to see what the town will vote to authorize from undesignated fund balance. We had put a placeholder of 150,000 in that, which is what we did last year. I'd like to bump that to 200,000, but only because I'm still working on the audit. And that's why we have a number, that's why we do not to exceed, so that if it comes in that I can only take 150, great, but if I can take 200, I'd like to.
Yeah.
You know, so I'd like to change that number to 200,000. And then, we'll know in our, when prior to booking the commitment, what we've got,
And that's
Good.
on Article 57.
I approve that. I mean, I agree with that.
Yeah.
We've got 200, let's take it.
Right.
And
I agree.
Is it-
I agree.
I'm fine with that.
perfect.
I
And
just didn't catch that earlier, I apologize.
hey, that is okay. I'm glad you caught it now. Article 58, to see if the town will bring forward bits of fund balance related to a school article. This was not included in the school articles this year. It had been last year. So we are actually going to omit Article 58. It does not apply.
Okay.
So they're not-
That's the article that they used to let everybody know what their fund balance was going to be, and they haven't had any fund balance in the last couple of years. If there's fund balance there, they try to use that to reduce the allocation from the town. They don't feel they're gonna have any, so, and they didn't last year either, so.
Okay.
And the only last change again is putting in the 9 o'clock, keeping 9 as it is. And so with that, those were the tweaks to the warrant that came in. And with the board's indulgence, once we get on to the final bit, I hope that there's a motion to approve the warrant and send it on to legal counsel for review. But I know there's a discussion before then. I just didn't want to lose the idea of where the motion hopefully ends up.
Tyler, one
Change.
thing, oh, sorry. I'm sorry. Go ahead, John.
No, yeah, we just went over the stuff. I don't see anything, but I don't have any questions, so I guess that's up for you guys then.
I'm looking at this new draft, Tyler, and maybe you're gonna tell me, because you know my issue here. I just wanted that designation of the town administrator, formerly the secretary. Yeah. I mean, do we need to keep referring to the sort of outdated description of what you do? Look at the general government in Article 23.
I don't have a problem with it.
I think we can nix it. And
just-
you did mention it right before the, yes.
Yeah, I did. I dropped that on you, but I
Taking
think
out the assistant to the select board?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Take
I
that
mean,
out,
I think we all call you the town administrator. We call Mary the finance director. That's what y'all
Yeah.
do for us. We're very
Yeah.
appreciative. So let's just, strike that, please. Thanks.
Good point.
Yeah, I
Good
think-
point.
Yeah, I think you guys changed that, right? Back in
Yeah.
5 years ago, so
Like, yeah, some time ago.
Yeah,
And
it was quite a while ago.
and I think the reason it stayed in there was because as things shifted over budgets, but
Right.
it's several years ago now. So,
Absolutely. Get it out of
so
there.
now with that catch, again, thank you for the eagle eyes, Aria. Any other thoughts, comments on the warrant? In terms of signing the warrant, once we get back a blessing from Kristen, I just want to share. This warrant needs to be posted next Tuesday, period. And so I'm hopeful to be a quick turnaround from Kristen and we can work on getting signatures. But at the very latest, next Monday, I will need to see everyone by. And it kind of depends on when Kristen gets things back, and I can make myself readily available to everyone, but we will need signatures, so Citizen Trebona can post this around town.
Yeah.
And he's excited to do so.
I'm
Oh,
sure.
and we did add, last thing, because I'm proud of it, on the officer's return, we did add the Five Islands Wharf as one of the places because the TOPMB has invested in a bulletin board down there. So it'll be another area of town that is very frequented by folks that the warrant will be visible.
Cool. Does that need a motion or?
If we
You
could
need a
move-
motion to approve the warrant, correct?
Yep, and to send it to legal counsel.
Okay, I move to approve the warrant as presented and send it to legal counsel for review.
And I second that.
All right, all in favor?
3-0.
Yep.
Perfect. And John, I have nothing else. I turn this back over to you for public comment.
Well, before we go there,
Yeah.
I've just had one comment about the easement issue and town meeting. And I know that Tyler has posted on the website, the map, et cetera, et cetera. First question, there's a draft easement. Is it actually, if the warrant is authorizing us to negotiate an easement, is it counterproductive to put out a draft document that isn't that we didn't draft, that we haven't agreed to, that, is that useful or relevant?
I think because we had a public hearing on that document, which does include the septic design, it includes the placement location. I
Okay,
think it's a good starting point for any negotiation that we would have to have. Because anything that pivots dramatically from that, I do think gets complicated.
right. I just was afraid we might be confusing people if there are things in there that aren't going to end up in the final version, if there is one. And then the other thing, I want to be sure that at town meeting, we have a visible display showing it with a map and, materials. The people who have not prepared themselves for this vote can get the lay of the land before they walk in the door. And I'm wondering, I don't know if everybody has seen the communication from Norma Lapointe.
Yeah, I think it's Nora.
Nora. I am wondering how we can share that information and if we got other written comments from anyone.
The written comments we received came from the Bovaers, which were sent along with the questions that they had posed
Mm-hmm.
that Mike had answered. I would say that in terms of, we could add that item as an item of correspondence, but I think your point is to have those points raised at town meeting,
Mm-hmm.
or are you talking prior to town meeting?
Either, but basically for the benefit of those at town meeting. Because my perception is that she wrote this letter because, and you said it was on a military stationery. She's probably not going to be at town meeting. And I don't know whether or not the Lapointe family vote in Georgetown, but they're residents of Blueberry Hill. And it's a very cogent letter. So I was just interested in having it see the light of day as opposed to just sit in my inbox.
Well,
I guess
what about putting it on tonight's meeting materials?
to include that as correspondence.
Yeah. I mean, then it's readily available, just like the agenda and some other packet materials. I don't know. I'm just thinking out loud.
I'd also say that if somebody wanted to read that letter at town meeting, it is a public document and folks
Right.
would be able to. But I
Yep.
do know that only at town meeting, only Georgetown voters will be able to speak.
Unless they have
There
the
is-
permission of the,
Unless they have unanimous consent of the entire body, meaning if one person, and Bob's not here to do it, objects to Tyler speaking at town meeting, your administrator can't speak at town meeting. That I do know that one of the Perkins family intends to attend and hopefully will be able to offer thoughts, but is not a resident of Georgetown full-time, not a voter, so that's one that folks would have to grant permission to be able to speak. But I do know that when that item is on the floor, somebody could read that letter and offer the thoughts just so the town hears them. But I'm trying to think in real time about ways to put out one, and we just want to be careful that
Yeah, I
whatever
know.
we put out, we're
So
not.
maybe this is all we can discuss and just think about it a little bit more, but uh, it has to be unanimous to let someone speak who's not a resident.
Yes, and I can tell you in the town of Bowden, we always had somebody who would speak, and I never objected because I'm not that person, but I thought about it every year.
Is there, I mean, so again, I'm just thinking out loud as we try to troubleshoot this. Is there any reason, I know um, it could be considered belaboring the point, but it's an important point. This is an important warrant article for folks to decide on. What about having John Cunningham read whatever's come in about this easement issue?
Well, the trouble is
Uh,
that the only written comment is that one, and the
Well,
Beauvair's comment.
yeah, the
Yeah, but they
Boisvert.
were just questions. Yeah, they raised.
I do think that if we get to that point, we very well could have 10 people start writing letters in favor of the project, and the last thing I want is the moderator to have to start reading letters of folks who aren't in the room. So
Yeah,
I think that's a
Okay.
good idea, but
Yeah.
I do think that concerned citizens, I can tomorrow append the letter to the meeting materials packet on our website that stays up for a couple of weeks. And if it's there, somebody definitely would be able to,
yeah,
you know,
that's a good idea, Tyler.
Yes, and what about Tyler? Can you designate just essentially a folder about the Blueberry Hill easement issue? And that's where somebody goes. They click on that part of the
uh, so,
packet.
so I can't do it that easily. I can add a separate PDF that's labeled and it's pretty straightforward. Again, the hesitation that I have about all things Blueberry Hill that hasn't been directed up until now is that we've had 2 code enforcement officers, 2 administrators, a slew of board. I don't want to be accused at any point of trying to tip the vote, and I know that we
Absolutely.
don't. And I don't want us to accidentally leave out something that was received 2 years ago that could offer a great point in a different direction.
Yes, I appreciate that. I forgot that there's all this
History.
besides what we've been doing for the last year
Yeah.
for the other meetings that
Yeah.
I was only watching and not participating. Great point. Thank you, Tyler.
Okay, so I think we're good if you make it available at the website.
Thank you, Bob.
And I'm sorry I interrupted. We must be back to public comment.
I believe so. Is there any public comment out there? I don't see any.
Come on, guys, were you listening?
So I guess I'd entertain a motion to adjourn.
I move to adjourn.
Thank you, Aria, for attending from DC, and I second that motion.
Sorry. Yeah. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.
Good night.